Now that we have a clean surface, we'll start to apply the colour. The first stage is to apply a base coat of colour using a sponge. So shake the bottle well, and then apply a small amount onto the sponge. Work the colour into the leather, making sure to get all creases and pleated areas. The aim of the first coat, the base coat, is not to totally colour the leather, but rather just to apply a base covering, making sure to get into all nooks and crannies. To avoid over-applying the colour into the creased areas, the best thing to do is put some colour onto the sponge and then wipe it onto the larger areas first. Then, as there's less colour applied to the leather, you can then start to apply it to the creased areas. This prevents building the paint up down the flutes and any creases. You can see that after one base coat, the finish is quite streaky and smeary, but don't worry, because as we apply a subsequent base coat and then a spray coat afterwards, this will totally even out. The idea of applying a second base coat is to get more coverage of the base colour so that less spraying is involved at later stages. The second base coat is applied in the same manner as the first, except you should apply less pressure whilst doing so. Also, wait about 20 to 25 minutes in between applying base coats of colour. This is the type of finish you should aim to get before applying the spray coat afterwards. Pour a small amount of colour into the glass jar and then screw the nozzle on top. Then attach the other part of the airbrush to the jar and set the spray pattern. Once you have the spray pattern set, you can then start to spray the leather at about a distance of 6 inches. You can see that as we spray the colour on, all the streaky and smeary areas are totally removed, creating a nice, smooth, even finish. Only spray thin coats of colour onto the leather at any time. You don't want to spray over one area more than necessary, because this could just create runs or smears. Once you've sprayed a coat of colour on, take a hairdryer out and then start to dry the leather. If you don't have a hairdryer, you can just allow it to dry naturally. Then, after about 5 minutes of applying the first coat of colour, you can then spray a second coat of colour on top of that, just to blend in any areas you may have missed the first time around. Again, while spraying the leather, always spray from a distance of about 6 inches. If you get too close to the leather, you'll just end up applying too much colour. If this does happen, just dab whatever area it is with a sponge to absorb the excess colour. Also, if the airbrush spits any colour out onto the leather, again, either dab it with your finger or a sponge. Do not wipe the leather, otherwise that will just make it smear. The final stage is applying a finish to the leather surface. Before spraying the finish on, wipe the leather down with a cloth just to remove any excess colour. We start off by spraying the gloss finish onto the leather, as this is much harder, stronger and longer lasting than any of the other finishes. Spray slightly less on than you would when spraying the first coat of colour on, as the gloss can be quite runny. Then, as before, dry the area off with a hairdryer. Because we've applied a gloss finish, it will look very shiny once it's dry. Then spray the second finish coat on, either matte or satin, depending on what you've chosen. Again, Spray one coat over the whole leather to give a good even covering, and then let it dry, or dry it with a hairdryer. Apply 2 subsequent coats just to give a really strong coverage and also to completely kill the gloss coat that we applied earlier. You will see that the finished result looks just as leather should, very natural. Also, the coating that we applied is extremely strong and flexible and will wear and last as long as new leather would have originally. You can see that as we flex and pound the leather, it moves in the same way that a natural piece of leather would.